Welcome to Riley Blake Designs Block Challenge. I'm Cindy Cloward and I am so excited to sew along with you. This is year number 4 and we have 16 new and unique blocks from our Riley Blake designers. The schedule is listed on our website and I'm going to be sewing along with using our confetti cottons this year. On our social outlets, we'll be featuring batiks, and then each of our designers will be using their own collections. So whatever you choose to sew with, we're glad you're sewing with us. So let's get started. So if you're new, this is your first year, I'm going to go through some of the supplies needed that will help, the supplies and notions needed that will help you in this sew along. And then grab your fabric and the pattern and we'll be ready to get started. I recommend a Seam Sew Easy guide. This is designed by Lori Holt and it's really helpful in getting an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is new this year. This is a little thread cutter shaped as a bee and it's just a nice addition. And it's just a unique item to have on your machine to cut those threads. Another item that I highly recommend is this 1/4 inch ruler. We designed it this year. I worked with the team on this and it has this nice edges for you to cut off those pesky dog ears or just trim down to a 1/4 inch. So that is very helpful. Tried and true tools that I highly recommend is a rotating mat, large and small. You'll use the small most, but you can get one or either, but I highly recommend a rotating mat. The trim up rulers really highly recommend, and we'll have supply recommendations on the pattern. So let's get started. What's our first block? Well, this block was designed by Lori Holt. It's called Vintage Delight. Lori will do her own block in her own fabric. I'm doing it in our confetti cottons, and this is what it looks like finished. So the first thing you're going to want to do to get started is download the pattern. Again, block number 1, Vintage Delight. It's on our website. I'm going to put the pattern over here. It gives you all the instructions for the pieces you're going to need for this block. And you see I've cut out all my pieces and I have them labeled. I forgot to mention the other thing I highly recommend are these handy stickers. And they make it really easy to organize your pieces and keep you sewing what you need to sew. Of course, you're going to need your rotary cutter, but the rest of these supplies I can move away for now. I'm going to leave that one there. So put these under here. And one tool I need is my glasses, and let's go through the pattern. So the pattern tells you to take your A squares and your C rectangles, your C pieces, and you're going to mark corner to corner, 4 of them. So one of the supplies, you're going to need a mechanical pencil, and to mark those corner to corner. Now, if you have a Seam Sew Easy guide, you can skip this step because I'm going to mark 2 and then I'm going to show you how the Seam Sew Easy guide works if you're not familiar with it. And then you have to be really mindful of the direction. So when I'm going to sew this unit, I'm going to sew from here to here, and then I'm going to flip it down like that, double check, and that's what we want that unit to look like. So make sure you're mindful of the direction that is going. So these 2 are going that way. And if you don't mark your fabrics, then sometimes you need to pay extra attention which way you're sewing to make sure it's going the right way. Because for this little unit, we only sew one side on. It's kind of the flip and turn method. So I'm going to just take it to my pressing station. Sometimes it's nice to just create a temporary heat adhesive so you don't have to pin If you're more comfortable pinning, pin away. Now, since this is my little tip of making a nice rectangle, since we are going to trim this side off, I'm sewing on the line, but maybe just a skosh to the outside toward this corner. So when we flip that open, that just lines up perfectly and makes a nice rectangle. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. And my stitch length is a 2.25. If I'm sewing with batiks, I use a 2.0. And sometimes I will do a 2.0 and with regular cottons, but today I'm sewing 2.5. Now these are the unmarked squares, and I'm going to line that up. If you're lining up just a skosh to this side of the line, that's your center line. So you line up that corner. And so all the way down like that. Okay, this is what I use my little bee cutter on top for. Clip my threads, easy enough. Now check one more time. You're gonna trim that, and that's what we want that unit to look like. So before you trim that down, check and recheck. Okay, 1/4 inch ruler. This is the handiest thing, one of my favorite new tools. Just line that up with your stitch line, and then you've trimmed down a perfect 1/4 inch. Okay, that's right. I'm making sure. Got to check and recheck, right? Okay, let's take it to our pressing station. I kind of set my seams all together, warm them up. Now let's just open that up. Give it a nice little press. Let it cool underneath the clapper. We take all these units over here. We're going to set them to the side. Clean this up. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take our D squares and A squares, and we're going to make one at a time half square triangles. So this method, they're going to hopefully be the perfect 2.5 inch square. But to do this, again, if you don't have a Seam So Easy guide, let's hurry and mark corner to corner our A squares. And then the rest will just, since I have a Seam So Easy guide, I'm just marking one to show you. Now I'm going to use the Seam So Easy guide. Let's take these little half square triangle units, bring them over here, and let's check them for accuracy. Now, you shouldn't, with the measurements given, you shouldn't have to trim down at all. But let's just check them all, because none of us are perfect. If they're too small or too big, we want to know. So that's good. That's what these little trim it rulers are perfect for. Actually, I think I might just have a little trim, ever so slightly. It was hardly even worth trimming that. This one's a little ski-wampus and it's pulled a little to the inside. It's okay. We're just gonna stretch that a little bit. So I'll check that last one ever so slightly to trim off, but we're good to go. Okay, let's move that out of the way. Now we're gonna take these units and put them with our A squares. Now it matters which way you place the block. So it goes like that, actually. Yeah, that's right. Check and double check. So I'm gonna flip that over. And I'm gonna pin it where I'm gonna start my stitches. And then I just lay it on my machine, the direction I'm gonna sew like that. So I'm just gonna do the rest of them just like that. Have your pattern handy, check and recheck. Now this one, again, if your half square triangles are a little bit on the just slightly small side, just give it a tug. When you're sewing, it'll pull right into place. Okay, I'm gonna take it to my pressing station. Well, after I clip my threads. And just open it up. I'm pressing towards the dark side. Okay, that's our last unit. We bring them back, grab these units, and now we're gonna assemble this together. And this is what it's gonna look like. So we're making that little V shape right there. So I'm gonna pin these one at a time and we'll sew them. We'll chain piece these together. Okay, I'm gonna clip my threads, then I'll take it to my pressing station. Oh, let's open them up. Take a look. I'm gonna press to that side. That's where it kind of wants to go. I have steam in here. Sometimes I like steam in my iron. Sometimes I like to use my mister. I've got a couple little threads on there. Sometimes if I want to be really careful about not stretching my fabric, sometimes I won't use water at all. Okay, so let's take this back and let's talk about the next step. So we are making 4 of these units. So look, we've made those 2 peaks right there. And now we need to take our E square. It's a clever little block that Lori designed. And make a half square triangle and open it up. Now, since this is a little bit bigger square than fits on my Seam So Easy guide, I'm just gonna go ahead and mark all of these pink squares, corner to corner. Okay, now we're gonna take it here. And this is going to be our stitch line. And then we're going to trim it off on this side. So let's take all these units and just check and recheck. Make sure you're sewing the right way. So when you pull this back, you're going to see those 2 peaks. Put it right on that line. So you're starting right from the corner maybe just like I said, a skosh to the side you'll be trimming. But if you're watching this on camera, it looks like I am sewing right on the line. All right, we're gonna clip our threads in between these units. Bring it over here. Let's take a look. That's just what we want to see. That little peak right at the bottom. And now we're going to trim down to 1/4 inch from our seam. If you need to check each one, do it. Because you don't want to remake these little units. Throw those away. And then these 4 corner units are going to be finished. Look how sweet that looks. Let it cool underneath your clapper. Okay, these are ready to go, but it's always a good idea to make sure that they are the right size and you don't have to do any trimming. And so I've got a 4.5 inch trim up ruler, and you line up the center seam like that on the diagonal. And you can see I've just got a little bit on the outside, but you want to be very careful because I don't quite have a 1/4 inch. So I'm not going to trim that down. I'm just going to fudge a little bit when I'm stitching along to make sure I don't cut off my tip. So that's good to go. That's all lined up. That, I've got my point right there, and outside of the 1/4 inch is just a little bit of threads. Again, you can skip this step, but it makes for your blocks coming together so much easier if you can verify that you've got the right size blocks. There we go. Okay, let's put that away. And now it's time to assemble this block. These go in the corners with the points facing out. Just like that. And now we've got this beautiful red square in the middle. And then these B rectangles go on in between these blocks like that. Okay, so let's look at that. And now we're going to, again, I like to chain piece, so I just line those all up. My first pass, you can pin it right here if you'd like. I tend not to pin, I just bring the design board over. Make sure those are lined up. And if you have to tug a little bit because you want the bottom unit to line up with this B rectangle. Again, I'm just doing a scant 1/4 inch. Now, I do not cut the threads in between. Oh, let's move their pins out of the way. That over. And I just open it up. I leave my threads intact, and then I flip out the outside towards the inside. And this is where I do pin these, where I'm going to start my stitches. It just gets a little more fiddly as you're bringing it over to the machine because you've got this other unit already attached. So just line up that corner. Okay, let's take it to the machine. Okay, let's bring it over here, open it up, and now we just have 2 more seams. I don't tend to press at this point because I just like to look where my seams want to naturally lie. And that, usually I press to the dark side, and we certainly could. But it kind of naturally wants to naturally fall this direction, so I'm going to let it. So we're going to nest our seams like that. We have to get our bird pins for this. So let's, there we go. And since I'm here, I do the other side too. I'm here. You can pin on the outside. I'm going to choose not to. And then let's just take it to the machine and sew the last 2 seams. Okay, let's open it up. It's looking good. Now I'm going to take it to my pressing station. Let me cut this little thread here. Okay. And sometimes I give it a nice little mist. And I kind of press from the back side. There we go. Let's see, that wants to move that direction. And I'm going to press to the back side on this one. Now we'll open it up and give it one final big press. Okay, this is looking good. The last thing we need to do is square up this block with our 10.5-inch trim it ruler. And again, you can just line that center section, line up all the parts, make sure that your points are inside this 1/4-inch seam so they don't get cut off when you're sewing all your blocks together. And it is good to go. There's a few threads on the side that I'll just trim, but for the most part, everything's lined up and our first RBD Block Challenge block is finished. Congratulations if you're following along and sewing along with me. This is a fun block. You'll have to see what Lori Holt, what fabric she uses with her block on her social channels. But we're so glad you're here and that you're following along and sewing along with us. As always, we welcome your comments and your feedback on our RBD Block Challenge. But we hope you'll join us next time for our block number 2, Sparkle and Shine by Beverly McCullough. See you next time.